Welcome to the poorly named but very helpful injury timeline tool. I just want to give you a quick walkthrough of the tool, give you some highlights. That way you have a better idea of how it can be useful or just some ways you can take most advantage of it. So starting off, this is kind of the big picture. We actually see players' injuries in the season timeline that it happened. You can see how long the injury was. The injuries are color coded based on the area of the body. So shoulders, arms, those are going to be kind of blue. And then your legs, those are going to be more of pink, purple, red. And then you have things in between. If you hover over any of the injuries, you can get a little more detail. You can see if it was an IL related injury or maybe it was just a day-to-day. They missed a few games. You can see the detail that we have. In this case, it was he originally went on the IL with the left shoulder impingement. You can see when it started, when it ended, things like that. If you go down to this middle visualization for pitchers, this middle visualization is going to show fastball velocity, specifically on a per game basis. What we're looking at is average fastball for that day. So we have a couple things. We have 3 years worth of information. We have the baseline. So this is over the 3 years. There, his Hyunjin Ryu's average was about 90.5 miles per hour. And then the gray boxes on either side, that's one standard deviation above the average and one standard deviation below the average. And I put that on there so that when you're looking at this, you can kind of, the things that are interesting can really easier jump out to you. Anything within this gray box, that's within normal fluctuation of what you would expect from a pitcher. But anything below that, we might go, hey, let's look at this. So if we hover over one of these dots, this is one game's worth of information. So on 7/30/2020, his average pitcher average fastball velocity was 88.4 miles per hour. Looks like that's a blip. Looks like everything was fine afterwards. But that's the kind of thing, if we saw a couple of those, we might go, ooh, something's going on here. And obviously we do have a few more here. And so that might be the kind of thing where we look at. It doesn't mean there's definitely an issue, but it might be something that would cause further research. Down here, we have just some general information. We have, the seasons he pitched, how many innings he pitched. If he did not make an appearance in a season, it's not going to show up here. We have some summaries about the type of injuries he's had. Inflammation has been the most common injury type for him. His most common body part injured is shoulder. Now, some of that's because his shoulder injury went across 2 seasons, but you can get a feel for that. If you hover, you can actually get the detail of what those are. Again, most of this stuff is hoverable, so you can get your, see what type of things qualified as the inflammation. And the last thing to highlight here is over here on the right-hand corner, we have the lifetime IL days. Now, the reason I added this is because Jeff Zimmerman has done some research about when we can start to maybe anticipate some issues related to injuries. And for pitchers, what Jeff found is that after 120 days on the IL, lifetime accumulated IL days, we start to see higher injury rates. Or if a pitcher has 3 or more arm injuries. So if a pitcher has 120 days on the IL and 3 or more arm injuries that require IL stunts, we might really want to look at that and go, hey, this guy has a higher risk of re-injury. Doesn't mean he's not, he will definitely get hurt or definitely perform worse, but the risk is higher. So now we flip over to a hitter. Let's look at AJ Pollock. So this will take a couple minutes or a couple seconds to pull up. But I'll note, for the most part, it's going to be the same. The top is going to be your injury timeline. Nothing's going to change there. The thing that's going to change is this visualization in the middle when we move from pitchers to hitters. So for AJ Pollock, instead of having, obviously he's not a pitcher, so we don't need his fastball velocity. We have exit velocity. We're looking at the daily max exit velocity, and we put that on a rolling average. So the same 3-year sample, and look to see, okay, over that sample, how hard is he hitting the ball? Did he get hurt and he's hitting the ball less hard? So again, we're only probably more looking at things that fall below this standard deviation. With hitters, it's a little less clear because what I've noticed is I've seen a lot of natural fluctuation in hitters in their max exit velocity. And some of that's because the sample size we're looking at, but I do think it's helpful. If you look and you see injuries, you see an injury and you see a dip in max exit velocity on each side, I think that is telling us something that maybe it takes a little longer for that to show up. So again, you can hover and you can say, okay, that day he had a max exit velocity that day of 80 miles an hour. Basically, his rolling 20 game average, if you include that day, is 92.49. And as you can see, AJ Pollock got his max exit velocity back up into what would be a normal range for him by about halfway through this shortened season. So again, we have lifetime IL days for hitters. What you look at is when you start to hit 200 lifetime IL days, you will start to see a decrease in performance that isn't necessarily age related. That's the risk that we're looking at. That's something Jeff found. He also found that when it hits 200, we start to see it. When it hits 300, we see just the decline in performance accelerates faster than what you would expect just based on age. So the two big things we're looking at is 200 and 300. So at 200, we can start to see some decline. At 300 IL days, we're consistently seeing a more rapid decline. So that's the injury timeline tool. Hopefully that's helpful. I will try and include a link to Jeff's work related to the IL days, because I think that's very helpful for you to kind of have an understanding of that. If you have questions about the tool or want to talk about it, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. And I hope you enjoy using it. Thanks.